Razabani for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. With me, I've got the one and only notorious Mr. Gareth A. Davies. Gareth, I know it's February, but can I say Happy New Year?
Yeah, of course you can. Happy New Year to you as well, Raz, and your family. Yes, indeed.
How are you? How is the family?
Yeah, family's good. Thank you. Everyone's well, and yeah, I'm good. I mean, like everyone else, I'm just trying to get through this period. You have COVID depression on certain days. You know, we're all caged beasts, caged human beings at the moment, and you know, I think the important thing is just to, you know, arm yourself with as much information as possible, and treat this whole thing with respect. It's, you know, it's a war against a virus, isn't it? And so it's a very difficult situation. You know, boxing starts next week. You know, February the 13th, I think it is, and you know, I'm glad it's back. You know, it's been a very, very quiet start to the year because we've got used to big events. I mean, this time last year, I'd already been to Las Vegas for a big Conor McGregor fight, his comeback after a year out against Donald Cerrone. I've been to a big Bellator event in Los Angeles with Chris Cyborg, stayed out in America, traveled to Alabama to see Wilder, then went to Tyson Fury's camp. And then that was the big event, you know, round about this time last year, I was probably embarking on, you know, that sojourn in the United States. And that ain't there at the moment for the foreseeable. You know, it's, you know, and it's not about trips, but it's about being around big events and trying to get involved and do the nitty gritty and the detail. You know, I did an interview with Tyson Fury last week, and, you know, rather than go over all the normal questions, I asked him a lot of silly questions, which were just to elicit, maybe just to get him interested and have a different kind of conversation. You know, his favorite animal spirit being a dolphin, or that he'd have two daggers if he was fighting Deontay Wilder in gladiatorial Rome, but really, excuse me, a big shield and a big sword were his things. You know, and it's interesting how people react to that kind of thing, because, you know, it's probably about the 100th interview I've done with Tyson Fury. I just wanted to make it a bit different, but I think people coming to this for the first time, or not understanding that, you know, it's just creative. It's just being a little bit different. You know, you get some adverse comments like you do on IFL TV. Like, everybody wants it. Everybody wants it for nothing. Everybody's got an opinion. You know, people don't realize how many years. I mean, this is my 30th year in covering boxing this year, and I'm very proud to say that. And I love the industry, and it's a fascinating industry. There are a lot of complexities in it, and there are a lot at the moment. Big ones. And, you know, if you look at what I do, you know, I mean, I cover the sport. I mean, I don't give a lot of massive opinions. You know, I give professional opinions on the fights. And, you know, I don't give opinions about Donald Trump or Boris Johnson. You know, I mean, even though I always tell that story, and I wrote a column in it for the Telegraph once about challenging Boris Johnson to a cage fight once when he was mayor of London. Bit of fun. He accepted. I don't know if I ever told you the story, but he said, you know, I fight at 217 pounds. When do we go? Fisticuffs. And I just had lots of images of kneeing the prime minister, the future prime minister, in the head, and knocking him knocking him the fuck out. But no, it would, but it would never have happened. But, you know, it's a very, very, very unusual time, you know, and as a mature man, I've never experienced this in my life. You know, my children are grown up, and, like, man, this is a very unusual time. And I think kindness and patience with each other is really important, because everybody is in a difficult situation, whether it be for a moment or some moments in a day, or being isolated, or dealing with the anxiety of thinking about the future. It's a very interesting time, but it's a troublesome time for a lot of people. And, you know, we're not out of the woods in the industry yet. You know, I thought boxing did a very good job last year of keeping things on track. But, you know, you talk to Eddie Hearn, and 40% of the income from an event is from gate receipts, and that's not there at the moment. And it was a very fleeting time of having crowds in arenas, and there are certain places where they are having crowds in arenas. Hopefully it'll be a good year. But if that answers your question on my rambling answer there.
Slightly does. Gareth, we saw a little bit of positive light at the end of the tunnel last year when we saw fans return to the arena at the Anthony Joshua and Kubrat Pulev fight. It was only 1,000 fans, but it seemed like there was 10,000 fans in there. Did you then think to yourself, okay, fans are back, brilliant, 2021 can only get better?
Yeah, in a way, but I mean, not to launch into the whole pandemic theory here, but it's not going to change until most people are vaccinated, and that's going to take another 2 or 3 months to roll out. So the hospitals are full, and I think the fans make the sport. Like boxers make the belts don't make the boxers. And without our fans in the arenas, and the fans are amazing, people that travel to Vegas for a week or travel all over the world to support the fighters they love and have a great time, and the build up of big events, those kind of things, and the fans being around, it lights a fire, as because you feel it as well, and you've been there. It lights a fire under you to work all day. And when we're at these big events, we work an 18-hour day. You're just working. And, at the moment I miss that. And I do miss the fans in the arena, because it was great that night. Like you say, it was very quiet to begin with in the arena. I was working TV that night, and I was in a little TV position with DAZN, and it was very quiet until the last 3 or 4 fights, Hughie Fury, Lawrence Okoli, and then, it really lit up for Joshua, so, and it was a very interesting fight. I think he should have got rid of him earlier, but he's got his reasons. He's talked about it recently, hasn't he? He said he kind of learned things. He got whatever it was, those 9 rounds under his belt. And, hopefully the big one gets signed this year, and we get to go out. I think it'll be the Middle East, in May or June.
We'll come to that shortly. We had no boxing in January. The board made a decision to allow no boxing for the reasons that they stated. We're not going to go into that. But Eddie's announced 5 odd shows. Frank Warren's come out, announced shows. Warrington goes next week. We've got Avenisi and Kelly, Frampton, Herring, White rematch, Conor Benn, Lawrence Okoli, etc. Is there a standout show for you, or a standout fight, except for White-Povetkin, which we'll come to?
I'm always interested to see Conor Benn perform. He's a great kid. I've got a lot of faith in him going on and being a real crowd pleaser. If not the greatest boxer in the world, he's got something about him. He's got star quality. There's no question about that. I'm looking forward to seeing Lawrence Okoli against Krzysztof Glowacki. Glowacki, already a 2-time world champion, who's really only lost to, I think it's Maris Bradis and Alexander Usyk, isn't it? So the very highest level. Very good test. I think Okoli's a fascinating character, dropping his weight from 300 pounds and being inspired in the sport. And he's an inspiring figure. Not with the greatest boxing style in the world, but he's got his own style. Hatton had his own style. Nazim Hamid had his own style. Joe Calzaghe had their own styles. And, he's not the prettiest to watch, but I'm looking forward to seeing that. Frampton, probably last shot at a world title against Jamel Herring, depending on how that goes. That's going to be fascinating. And it's over here. It's at the Copper Box. Frank Warren confirmed to me the other day, and Frampton revealed it on TalkSport, and we spoke to him as well. What are the other fights? Well, and I mean, I've talked about all of them there, but, some of the women have got world title defenses. Savannah Marshall's back in action. I'm really looking forward to seeing her develop, and hopefully they make the matchup with Claressa Shields, who I spoke to recently. I mean, she's amazing, light middleweight, super middleweight, it's, and having seen her first fight, which was a female Hagler Hearns with her and Franchon Crew DAZN 5 years ago now, it's amazing that, it's amazing that those 2 women are actually really developing into boxers, not bruisers, No, it'll be nice week to week to get Fight Night back on TalkSport, to be doing the build-ups, to be doing the Zoom calls with them all, maybe going into the bubble a couple of times. But like everyone else, I want to get my vaccination, you know? So it's, you know, I'm looking forward to all of it. You know, it's a nice schedule, I think, all the way up to April the 6th at the moment. But I do feel that Dillian Whyte's got a big job on his hands against Alexander Povetkin. I think Monaco, which I think has had 29 deaths from COVID, which has very low rates of COVID infection, is probably a decent venue. It's been mentioned. If they do go abroad, obviously, a couple of those events are going to go to the SSE Arena, Wembley, tried and trusted method with a hotel across the road and the testing system that Matchroom Boxing's got in place. No, I'm looking forward to all of it, you know, really, to be honest. You know, it's just great when it comes back, because it has been an incredibly slow start to the year, incredibly slow. And we're still waiting for confirmation of this signed contract on Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, which I think is a big fulcrum for everything else for the year. And I know you'll come on to Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo in a minute as well. And that's another really big fight.
Dillian Whyte obviously has that big rematch against Povetkin March 6th. After his shock loss in August, which was in fight camp, Dillian said he wanted the rematch immediately. They penciled it in for November, got pushed back because of Povetkin catching COVID to January, and then got further pushed back to an extent where Eddie said we might look at a different opponent. Do you feel like the time has going to give more, the time between the first fight and by the time they get in the ring, it's kind of a blessing in disguise for Dillian that he's had so much extra time mentally and physically to prepare for the rematch?
Yeah, I think it's still a tough fight because he knows what happened the last time, and maybe he's susceptible to that left hook, you know, because of his body shape and movements, the way he does things. But he will have worked on that relentlessly. If nothing, Dillian Whyte is so ambitious to get to that world title status again, you know, and get the interim belt and want to press on. Look, the fourth round, it looked like he was going to finish the guy. I was there live that night, luckily, and fortuitously as well. I'm privileged to be there. It was a brilliant event. Katie Taylor that night as well, of course. And, you know, he's just got to get it right. He's got to get it right because it's a tough climb back. But if he gets that interim belt back, he's back in the mix, isn't he? So he knows what he's got to do. He nearly put him away in the fourth round. And he's a much improved boxer as well as fighter. We don't have to question his warrior spirit. And I know the conventional wisdom is not to go straight back into a rematch with someone that's just knocked you out. But, you know, the dust will have properly settled since August. And like you say, he's had 6 months almost to work on. No, it'll be 7, won't it? By the time they fight. So, you know, it's a significantly long enough period. There'll be some demons there, of course there will, you know, but he knows he got within a whisker of doing what he needed to do. But this guy Povetkin's a tricky customer. So, you know, it's good that he's got the rematch. It's good that Eddie Gate got him the rematch clause in many ways. So, yeah, really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to it. It'll be a big night.
Kind of a different level of pressure, not just to avenge the loss, but also we cannot have a defeat. Dillian Whyte cannot lose on March 6th because it takes him really right down that ladder.
Yeah, it does. It's snakes and ladders at the moment, isn't it, there? Because you've got, you know, Joe Joyce and Alexander Usyk vying for that WBO interim that's going to happen by the look of it, very much so. So they'll be there in place. Well, who knows how long it obviously there's a concertina here. It depends, you know, when the two fights back to back, if they are back to back, are signed between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. So the WBO mandatory may have to wait till 2022, unless whatever happens between Fury and Joshua forces them in between. Who knows? So, but I don't think that's likely. I mean, I think if there's anything, if it's a really good fight between AJ and Fury, they'll do a second fight. If it's a controversial decision, they'll do a second fight. You know, and knowing their styles, I mean, who knows? We just don't know what's going to happen in that fight. You know, I favor Fury to win it based on his boxing skill set, but we just don't know what's going to happen. You know, and Fury knows that himself as well. AJ knows that. It's a massive, massive fight with huge implications for the whole division. So for Dillian Whyte to get back into the position of mandatory challenger or interim champion with the WBC is really important, especially when everything's being fiddled about with at the moment. You know, I was counting the other day, Dan Rayfield put out a list of world champions. It's something like 80, you know, world champions when you count them all up. So, you know, it's a very, very important fight for him. He can do it. There's no question he can do it. But he's going to have to really gather himself and go in there and do it, you know, to really be successful in that contest.
Gareth, whenever promoters or managers are trying to make a big fight, we're always hearing about percentage split issues or who's going to walk out first or which corner I'm going to get. Everything we're hearing about Joshua Fury just seems very, very positive. Eddie Hearn said the draft has been sent. Bob Arum says we're going to review it and go back. Hopefully he'll have a signed contract. From your conversation with Fury, and we know Fury wants to fight, we know Joshua wants to fight, but there's always politics involved. From your conversation, does it realistically look like this is going to be their next fight? There's not going to be a Usyk issue. There's not going to be a Deontay Wilder issue. This is the next fight for both fighters.
I have no doubt after speaking to Tyson Fury, both recorded and off the record before we started and when we ended, that he definitely wants that fight. He mentioned the 18-month hiatus he's had because he didn't fight in December. That's going to be a big talking point going into this fight. 18 months away. But that's why he's in the gym twice a day, because that's why he's staying on 19.5 stone and not getting up so that he's having to take weight off when he does go into camp. He's going into camp to train to fight Anthony Joshua, to spar similar types of opponents. So that is a big factor. There's no doubt about it. But, you know, so many boxers have only fought once in the last year and a bit. So many. So maybe it's an equalizer, but I got every impression that he wants this fight. But the caveat being, I don't want to wait around too long, because if it doesn't get signed and agreed, why would I wait around? You know, because he needs to be active. But there's no point taking a fight now if they're going to fight in May or June, and it is that big a fight. And he's confident in his physical skill set and his abilities to go in there and do a job. And, you know, he's saying he's going to knock him out in rounds 1, 2, or 3. He's going to do a Deontay Wilder second fight on him. But you never know with Fury. You never know. He's going to go in there and just test the temperature in the office, you know, and test the temperature of the water and just see how it goes. So it's fascinating. I can't wait to see the two big men together on a dais for a press conference. I cannot wait. I want to see what's going to go on, you know?
Gareth, a lot of the fans weren't happy last year when they were hearing rumours that Joshua Fury may not happen in the UK. With everything that's going on in the UK, it now is evident that it makes sense for it not to happen in the UK. Where do you think it kind of lands on the other side of the world?
I just don't see anywhere else other than the Middle East. I think there'd be a huge site fee. I know there's 10 countries, 10 different territories that have come in buying the fight. Just excuse me 1 second, because I'm running out of power. I just want to plug in. We are good. Yeah, we are good. No, I see it going to the Middle East. I think there's a tried and trusted method that they had before when they went to Saudi. I think they're big favourites. And I think, as Eddie Hearn said on a Zoom call with a few of us the other day, that they're aggressively pursuing it, several states in the Middle East. So I do expect it to go there. And, you know, at the very least, they want to have a decent crowd. And so it allows a crowd. You know, ordinarily, I would have been saying, no, it's got to be here. But you can't sell 100,000 tickets to Wembley or 90,000 to Cardiff at the moment and be assured that you're going to be able to get those people in there, or there's a system of doing it, or that this coronavirus pandemic is precluding us from being at that. So no, I ordinarily you'd want one of those fights in the UK, and hopefully by the end of the year they will be able to do one of them here. That's what I imagine they'll be looking at. First one over there, you know, going east, and the second one coming back in the UK.
You mentioned that a lot of fighters have had one fight in the last year. Potentially, we're going to have a fighter who's going to have 3 fights in 6 months in Saul Canelo Alvarez, who fought in December. Looks like he's going to fight Yildirim this month, as is mandatory, and then move on to Billy Joe Saunders. But is that a trademark of a great fighter, of a fighter that wants to stay active?
Totally, absolutely, and totally, it is, and he's got his rhythms, and on statistics alone, he's the most watched boxer in the world when he fights. So, massive audience in Mexico. He's a huge star. Again, I've been around him several times. I was in his camp in San Diego. When was it? Just before we locked down, early last year, just about a year ago. It was amazing to be there with him and Oscar De La Hoya. Have some time with him, a bit of chat in Spanish, and because he doesn't really like to speak that much English, but yeah, I mean, it's tremendous. I mean, I think he betters Avni Yildirim in every capacity, and I see him coming through that almost like a workout, a hard workout. What is it? His 58th fight. So, he hasn't lost since Floyd Mayweather in whatever it was, 2013. Although, I think he lost that first fight to Gennady Golovkin by 8 rounds to 4 or 7 rounds to 5. If you're kinder to him, it wasn't a draw in my view by any means. But he's got his rhythms right, and what is he, 30? He wants to be active, and he's in the prime of his career, and he will be for the next 3 or 4 years. But again, he's got to come through that fight. It looks like there's contracts being agreed at the moment with him and Billy Joe Saunders, which I think is brilliant. Again, Tyson Fury in that interview said, and I agree with him, that he'd like to see Billy Joe Saunders have a fight in between. But I spoke to Billy on Monday, and Billy, and that, I think the quotes have gone out now, but he's saying there's no point. I don't want to get a cut. This is a fight I really want. It's one that was going to stretch him beyond the imagination, his boxing skills. Really looking forward to it. I think it might be a 12-rounder. But he's got to be so active in that fight. He's got to counterpunch so much. He's got to be so clever. He's got to be really slick. He's the 7th Brit to go in there with the redhead himself with cinnamon hair, and he's never fought a gypsy, is what Billy told me, but he hasn't fought a gypsy yet. So we'll see. I'm really looking forward to it, because Canelo's a problem for Billy Joe Saunders, as well as Billy Joe Saunders, as his allies say, a problem for Canelo. So looking forward to that battle. And I'm really hoping to get out there for that in May the 1st, May the 8th, if it happens. Who wouldn't be excited at watching that, And again, Billy Joe Saunders is hard at work. I know, I can reveal he's hard at work. Looking forward to that fight. But yeah, looking forward to it. Simple as.
A lot of people gave Callum Smith a great chance with his height, his reach, his jab against Canelo. But when he got into the ring, he kind of froze because Canelo kind of took away his advantages. And Canelo proved that he's one of the best, if not the best, in the era at the moment. But do you feel like Billy has the best chance out of all the active fighters between 160 and 168 because of his southpaw stance and his boxing skills and IQ?
Yeah, probably because of those things you mentioned, but also Canelo, I thought, showed more defensive nous as well as aggressive, relentless kind of counterpunching, and his combinations in the fight against Callum Smith. He was very good at deflecting the height and reach differentials. And I think that was his advancement in this fight, showing that he is really improving as a fighter. That's why I say Billy Joe Saunders has got to be the best he's ever been, beyond David Lemieux's performance, beyond anything we've ever seen from him. But I think the very toughest fights get the best out of Billy Joe. So, no, I think Canelo was absolutely brilliant on the night against Callum Smith. I mean, I thought Callum Smith put up a fine performance. You know, he landed some. He got Canelo's attention at times, and you know, the only way I thought he was going to beat him was to do what Golovkin did in the first fight against Canelo, which was to hurt him and get him on his bike for a bit and take advantage of that and be the aggressor. But Canelo never allowed Callum to be the aggressor in that contest. He bossed it. He dominated it. But I do think that Callum still came out of it with great honor, you know, and found it, he wasn't able to break this aggressive, as I say, this relentless counterpunching style, allied with the fact that Canelo was very defensively savvy on the night as well.
Moving away from boxing, Gareth, MMA, UFC, we saw the return of the notorious one, Conor McGregor. He was in a very happy mood. He looked in great shape, extremely confident, used the terms 60 seconds, but then said, even if it goes a few rounds, you know, it'd be good for me because I've been out of the ring a little while. I know he said he's going to continue with MMA and continue in the UFC. What did you make of his loss? Was it a shock for you? And where does he go from here?
What did I make of his loss? I thought he was going to walk through Poirier in the first round. He had a brilliant first round against Poirier. I think he came close to finishing him. He's admitted it himself, I think only hours, maybe a day ago, that he's been too focused on his boxing, and that it's because he was heading towards a fight with Manny Pacquiao. It's a fight I hope doesn't happen. I don't see the point in it. I think the experiment with Mayweather worked and was a very successful event. It was great to be at. It brought the two sports together. There's a hell of a lot of that kind of stuff going on at the moment. Jake Paul and Ben Askren, Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather. But you see, if you add their social media, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter followers together, you go into the tens of millions. So you can see why they're doing that. It's a kind of money grab. And we always have to ask ourselves, why is this fight happening? What's the meaning of this fight? And they are commercial ventures. And I think it from the minute Conor McGregor got beaten by Dustin Poirier, I could see that he was definitely going to ask for a third fight with him, a trilogy fight. And I think that is what all the noise is around. You know, I think, if anything, I think we'll see Poirier McGregor around about May, June as well, probably in Las Vegas at the Apex, unless they plan another Fight Island Abu Dhabi event, which is also likely, because they've had a very successful run there, 2 successful runs. I think they'll be going there 2-3 times a year at the moment during COVID with no crowds. What did he do wrong? Yeah, he just focused too much on his striking. Anyone can lose in MMA. It's 4-ounce gloves. Poirier came back brilliantly in the second round, and he's a great fighter now. I mean, since his loss to McGregor, yes, he's lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov, but he's beaten Eddie Alvarez, Justin Gaethje, Dan Hooker, Anthony Pettis. They're all very formidable lightweight fighters in the UFC, 155-pound fighters. So it makes sense commercially. I think if the UFC will use it as leverage on Khabib as to whether he's going to come back or not. Otherwise, they'll strip him. Khabib's obviously beaten Poirier and he's beaten McGregor. So if he does come back and those two fight for the title, he's fighting someone he's beaten before. I admire McGregor for wanting to come back, but he said it himself, inactivity. We've talked a lot about inactivity tonight. It's part COVID, but it's part silk pajamas, rolling up in a billionaire's yacht. I did, my comments on Conor McGregor going into this event with Poirier were, there's no animosity between these two guys other than when that bell sounds. And I thought we did see a very mature McGregor around the whole event, very mature. He's always been brilliant at taking his losses as well. He's got a fantastic mindset of a martial artist. But I think that big McGregor era is over. You know, as he said himself, I had 60 seconds against Donald Cerrone in whatever it was, 3 years in MMA, in over a 3-year period. And, you know, fame, richesse. I don't see how the hunger is still there. You know, you know, I just think that kind of soaring McGregor era is over. But I do think if he, and he is a great fighter, he's achieved so much. I think 5 of the top 6 pay-per-views are his as well. So, you know, he's their greatest salesman ever in the UFC. But I think he's probably, after finishing on a high athletically, Nate Diaz is not that active anymore. I think that's a 3rd fight for him as well that's out there. But I don't buy the MMA crossover. I would be there if he fought Pacquiao. But I'm not sure it's going to happen. Rather like, if I can segue to the next thing you were going to ask me about, if there's more, unless there's more about McGregor. But I do think that era is really over. I mean, I think that he's made his mark on the sport. He's made his mark on the world. You know, he can be a divisive figure. It'd be nice if he's around for long enough in the sport that he just changes his act, if you like, you know, a little bit. That would be nice to see.
I'll end with this. I know I said I end with McGregor, but there were talks about Ryan Garcia going in there with Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao obviously currently fighting at 147, Ryan Garcia at 135. So it looks like it's going to have to be some sort of catch weight, and Manny to lose weight probably at his age, and Ryan, who's still kind of filling out his body as he matures. Is that unrealistic? I know Ryan's posted something on his Instagram, but there's nothing confirmed from Pacquiao's camp just yet.
It's great talk. They're 20 years apart. What's Manny Pacquiao got to gain from fighting Ryan Garcia? I think it would do big numbers. You know, I think it would do over 1 million pay-per-view in the United States. But, you know, why is the rising upstart fighting the aging old gun? If you know, I mean, he is a proper, 70 odd fights now. An absolute legend, one of the all-time greats. When people like Bob Arum tell you, you know, obviously Bob's promoted some of the greatest boxers ever. When Bob Arum tells you that Manny Pacquiao is as big in society in his own country as Muhammad Ali was in America, that's enormous. He's already got an incredible political career. I've had the privilege to interview him one-on-one so many times. He's fascinating. He's an enigma. There's so many facets to Manny Pacquiao, and there is even talk of him becoming president of that country at some point. I mean, how can you get any bigger than that from both boxing and from life? You started life in a shanty town, in a barangay, in a cardboard box. You know, I mean, stowed away on a boat at the age of 15, slept under a ring, worked on a building site. It's a story. It's a modern miracle. You know, it's an amazing story. So, you know, Ryan Garcia, I think, is a real rising star. But for me, and I think he is the biggest star in the lightweight division. There's no question about that for me. Teofimo Lopez is the best at the moment. Devin Haney is brilliant. I'm sure Shaka Stevenson and Tank Davis will really make impressions when Shaka comes up from the division below. I think he's very talented. Gervonta Davis, extraordinarily talented. Those are the 2 slightly smaller guys. Vasyl Lomachenko is still around. There's all these fights for Ryan Garcia to have. And for me, he's the draw in all of them. Because is he going to get knocked out by them all? Is he going to get outboxed? I mean, I don't want to say it too many times because I'll bore people. But he's like the Justin Bieber of boxing. You know, he's extraordinarily talented. He's got 8 point whatever it is million Instagram followers for a reason. And that is, half of them are haters and half of them love him. Good for him. Do you know what I mean? And I've interviewed him a couple of times now and I found him tremendous. I had to call his mum to get it organized, you know? It was brilliant. I know he's promoted by Golden Boy, but mum was trying to find him for my radio interview with him. He's, you know, he's fearless. And he showed great skills against Luke Campbell as well. Great skills. And he showed proper chops and a proper champion's heart when he was knocked down by him, you know? So, you know, I'd rather him take on those young guns in the lightweight division. I don't think the Pacquiao fight will happen. But if it does, like you say, Garcia will come in at 138 and Pacquiao will be 142 or whatever, you know. So, yeah, I mean, it's doable because they're not. Pacquiao's always undersized at welterweight, always, you know. But he is, what is he, 42 now? Something like that. So, yeah, if it happens, great. But I don't see it. I just don't see it happening. And it's not confirmed. It's just talk. And so much of our sport now is talk on social media, you know? That's probably why it's quite nice at the moment that Fury and Joshua are kind of staying away from saying, you know, apart from when they're interviewed and they go deep and when they are asked by us about what you're going to do to him, what's going to happen in the fight, they're leaving it to the promoters to get on with, and then the promoters to go out and find the site fees and the TV companies. So there's your answer.
Okay, Gareth, always a pleasure catching up with you. I know we said 15, 20 minutes. I think we've gone on, well, officially 50 minutes.
50 minutes was it? You're getting like Coogan Cassius, yeah?
In depth, as we like to call it. Thank you so much for giving me a little bit of time. Continue to stay well, healthy and safe. And I'm sure...
And sane. That's the big one.
Sane. And I'm sure over the coming weeks, during these events that are going to be taking place, that will probably bump into you, and we can do a nice little face-to-face for once rather than Zoom.
Yeah, don't bump into me too hard because you know you'll get the head kick knockout.
I've had the head kick already. Gareth Davies.
Great to see you, Raz.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.